On the surface, Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty seems like the ultimate party animal. He's brimming with confidence, constantly making quips, and reveling in outrageous adventures that span dimensions, alternate realities, and timelines. Rick Sanchez invented a portal gun, turned himself into a pickle, and regularly defies the laws of physics and morality, all while sipping on a flask of who knows what. Rick seems like a chaotic, happy-go-lucky genius living his best life. But underneath the sardonic wit, burps, and bravado lies a man riddled with pain, loneliness. Rick Sanchez, despite being the smartest being in the multiverse, is perhaps one of the saddest. And it's that dichotomy, the joyful chaos of his exterior and haunting sorrow of his interior, that makes him such a compelling, tragic character. Let's dive into the many reasons why Rick, for all his genius and humor, seems to carry the weight of the universe on his shoulders. One of the core themes of Rick and Morty is the concept of the multiverse. Rick's portal gun allows him to hop between countless dimensions where infinite versions of himself, his family, and his decisions exist. While this might seem like a liberating concept, no single action matters if infinite outcomes exist. It's also a deeply isolating one. Rick's awareness of the multiverse means he knows nothing truly matters. Relationships, choices, achievements, they're all just fleeting moments in an endless sea of possibilities. This existential nihilism manifests in his catchphrase, which, as we learn, translates to, "I am in great pain, please help me." It's not just a joke, it's a cry for help masked by a laugh. For Rick, the multiverse isn't a playground, it's a prison. Every universe reminds him of the futility of trying to find meaning in a world where meaning itself is infinitely replaceable. Burden of being the smartest. Rick is the smartest man in the multiverse, and that's not a title he wears lightly. His intelligence allows him to solve any problem, but it also alienates him from everyone around him. While others see his genius as a superpower, Rick sees it as a curse. He frequently mocks Morty, Jerry, and anyone who doesn't live up to his intellectual standards. This arrogance often feels like a defense mechanism. If no one can match his intelligence, how can he ever truly connect with someone? Rick himself admits that being smart sucks. He can understand everything except the one thing he craves most: genuine connection. Rick's relationship with his family is a cornerstone of his character. He's both the loving, protective grandfather and the toxic, self-destructive family member. His daughter Beth idolizes him, yet their relationship is fraught with unspoken resentment. Rick abandoned her as a child, and even though he's returned, he's still emotionally distant. Rick's bond with Morty is arguably the strongest relationship in the show, but it's also deeply problematic. He uses Morty as a sidekick, a shield, and occasionally as bait for his schemes. Yet, there are moments when Rick's vulnerability shines through, like when he attempts to kill himself in autoerotic assimilation after realizing how much his selfish actions have hurt Morty and others. In The Rick Shank Redemption, Rick claims his wife and daughter were killed by another Rick, sparking his descent into nihilism and science-fueled revenge. It's unclear whether this story is true or a fabrication. It aligns with Rick's emotional state. Loss defines Rick. Whether it's the death of loved ones or the destruction of his moral compass, Rick carries the scars of a painful past. And rather than confronting that pain, he buries it under layers of sarcasm, alcohol, and reckless adventures. It's impossible to ignore Rick's constant drinking. His flask is practically an extension of his character, and his burps punctuate most of his dialogue. While the show often plays his alcoholism for laughs, it's a clear sign deflecting attention from his vulnerabilities. Like all coping mechanisms, it's a temporary fix that only deepens his despair in the long run. Rick's humor is one of his defining traits, but it's also one of his greatest shields. His quips, insults, and one-liners are a way of deflecting attention from his vulnerabilities. When Rick laughs, it's often at the expense of others or to mask his own pain. His humor isn't a sign of happiness, it's a defense mechanism. By keeping everyone at arm's length with jokes and insults, Rick avoids the risk of getting hurt. Despite his hard exterior, Rick has moments of profound vulnerability that reveal the sadness lurking beneath. In The Wedding Squanchers, Rick sacrifices his freedom to protect his family, showing that he cares deeply even if he can't express it. In Pickle Rick, his transformation into a pickle is a metaphor as pain runs deep. He's a deeply flawed, deeply human character who struggles with the same fears and insecurities as the rest of us, just on a multiversal scale. Rick's sadness stems from his own brilliance. He sees the world for what it is, chaotic, meaningless, and cruel. But rather than accepting this reality and finding joy in spite of it, Rick lets it consume him. He builds walls of sarcasm, alcohol, and nihilism to protect himself, but those walls also keep him isolated. Rick may be the smartest man in the multiverse, but he's also the loneliest. Rick Sanchez is a paradox. He's hilarious yet tragic, arrogant yet vulnerable, genius yet self-destructive. His sadness isn't just a character flaw. It's a reflection of the human condition. His unparalleled intellect allows him to transcend the limitations of time, space, and even morality. But it's precisely that brilliance, knowledge, isn't just power, it's a burden. He sees the strings behind the universe's curtain, the mechanisms that strip life of its mystery, its innocence, and its meaning. He's mastered the infinite, yet he's unable to find joy in the finite. Every alternate reality, each one just reminds him how small and insignificant everything really is. Rick's intelligence is a double-edged sword. It gives him the power to manipulate reality, cheat death, and solve nearly any problem. But it also condemns him to a life where he cannot ignore the absurdity and futility of existence. And while he hides behind cynicism, sarcasm, and alcoholism, moments of vulnerability shine through. These moments hint at the depth of his sorrow. He alienates himself from everyone around him, knowing that caring about anything or anyone can be weaponized against him. He's a deeply flawed, deeply human character. And that wraps up our deep dive into why Rick Sanchez might just be the saddest genius in the universe.